I terminated Eddie Johnson's employment as superintendent of the Chicago Police Department for cause effective immediately. It has become clear that Mr. Johnson engaged in a series of actions that are intolerable for any leader in a position of trust, particularly the head of the Chicago Police Department.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Terry Martin with the Illinois Channel.
Jeff Berkowitz here in Chicago Public Affairs.
And Jeff, we are going to be examining a number of issues for our viewers this week, but we start with an event that broke news this morning when Mayor Lori Lightfoot surprisingly came out and announced that she was firing Police Chief Eddie Johnson. Surprising in a way because he had already announced that he was going to be retiring.
Well, you know, it was reported today, I don't know if she referred to it in her press conference, but reported today, which is December 2nd, by Cranes, that there's a video that I think it was either a video in the car, a video on a policeman, but somehow the video, Cranes speculated, shows Mr. Johnson to have been inebriated. That's the word that Cranes used. You know, if there's a video showing this guy inebriated, well, she said when he spoke, she being the mayor, when Chief Police Eddie Johnson, Superintendent Johnson, spoke initially about this incident with the mayor said, he said to me, you know, I had a few drinks at dinner. He didn't, certainly she did not report that he told her he was inebriated. Another word for being drunk, okay? So when apparently the Inspector General looked at the video, and sometime, could have been recently, maybe a while ago, you know, Cranes reported that the Inspector General looked at the video and then reported what he saw to the mayor.
Let's listen. The mayor had this press conference today. We got video courtesy of NBC5 Chicago, and she gave out 3 reasons why she was firing Mr. Johnson.
There are 3 reasons for this decision. First, the finding of the Inspector General's report regarding Mr. Johnson, which I recently reviewed, makes clear that Eddie Johnson engaged in conduct that is not only unbecoming, but demonstrated a series of ethical lapses and flawed decision-making that is inconsistent with having the privilege of leading the Chicago Police Department. Second, Johnson intentionally misled the public in a press conference he called on October 17, 2019. He was not caught off guard, and he had plenty of time to choose his words. And the choice he made was a communicated narrative replete with false statements, all seemingly intended to hide the true nature of his conduct from the evening before. Finally, just like with the public, Eddie Johnson intentionally lied to me several times, even when I challenged him about the narrative that he shared with me.
It was this thing about he had this medical issue and he mixed up his medicines, and then it leaked out from there that he may have had a few drinks at dinner. Never did it come out before, I don't think it came out before today, that he was inebriated, and, you know, doesn't sound good. And the thing of it is, this is in the backdrop of DUIs. And the problem of DUIs and the major damage done by people who drive while drunk. And I've never understood why the laws are not more severe to deal with DUIs and also more enforced that way. And now I think I understand a little better, because there are a lot of people, I'm guessing, who are involved in high places who apparently like to drink and drive. And these are generally older people, not to go after them, but you know, younger people, I think one of the new things that's happened with Uber and Lyft, it's damn easy to hop in an Uber, even if your car's there, okay? But older people seem to still want to drive. And, you know, what is Eddie? Is he 65, 68? He's older, okay? I mean, sweet Jesus. I know cops for years, going way back, who kind of use other cops as taxi cab drivers.
People might say, look, the guy was on the way out the door. Johnson was already announced that he was retiring. We already got his replacement about to start. Why bother with firing him now in December when the new guy's going to start in January? And so Lightfoot made a very key point of saying why she was taking these actions. Let's take a listen.
As for the department, yesterday, today, and tomorrow has to be about culture change. That must start at the top. That hard but important work is impossible without strong leadership, focused on integrity, honesty, legitimacy, and accountability. Time and again, line police officers are held accountable for their actions, but their supervisors get a pass, even when the supervisors were aware of or directed the conduct at issue. Perhaps in years past, someone in Mr. Johnson's circumstances would have been allowed to simply retire. Doing so today, in these circumstances, would have been inconsistent with who I am and with the kind of principled leadership I want to bring to the city. The old Chicago way must give way to the new reality. Ethical leadership, integrity, accountability, legitimacy, and yes, honesty must be the hallmarks of city government. There must be no mistake about the message I am sending today.
Well, as they say, timing is everything in politics, and this is good timing by the mayor. You know, she's fortunate that she has an interim chief ready to step in today, and apparently the chief, Charlie Beck, has stepped in. As of earlier today, I heard he was either on an airplane or getting on an airplane. And so she can thank herself for being that prepared. Maybe she saw this coming, and that's why she had an interim chief ready. She doesn't have to scout around for a deputy, so forth. She doesn't have to scout around for somebody who might not believe in what she just said about a culture change. I think she's confident that Charlie Beck represents the culture change. Maybe he's there, as they say, just as an interim, maybe not. But for whatever time he's there, I think the culture change started today. Not tomorrow, not next week, not 6 months, today, okay? And the culture change, folks, in case you hadn't noticed, police are on guard, on notice. Tell the truth. If something happened, if you see it, report it, okay? Don't do as they apparently did with Laquan McDonald. Numerous people reported or told lies. Because guess what? This mayor ain't gonna tolerate it, and I guess she's gonna put somebody there as interim permanent for chief of police who won't tolerate it. And apparently the FOP president backed her up today and said he agreed. This is one of the few times the FOP and this mayor have agreed. So I think she's on to something.
Let me ask you,
Smart move on her
Jeff,
part.
were the FOP and Eddie Johnson on the same page, or were they at odds and the FOP happy to?
Well, that's true. They were at odds, especially over the Trump visit recently. They were not thrilled that Eddie, as they thought, Eddie Johnson showed disrespect to the president, didn't show up when he was here for this International Association of what was
Chiefs of Police.
Chiefs of Police that met, right? And so
here Eddie,
in that
Eddie
sense, they were
Johnson
not-
was
they were
the
not
host,
yeah.
and he didn't show up
Right.
for when the president spoke.
Yeah, the FOP leadership probably jumped on this, and they were happy to jump on it. But nevertheless, they were backing up the mayor and on this important step. And she was talking about culture change. Maybe they hadn't noticed that, but in that sense, they were backing up the mayor talking about culture change.
Let me ask you, I know
It's a big day
we
for the
want to
mayor.
get onto a different topic, but let
Yeah.
me ask you something else. To what extent is this more than about what's happening in the police department and that Lori Lightfoot is trying to put her stamp firmly on her administration and saying, I'm not like the other guys, and this isn't just about the police department, but we're not going to tolerate this kind of thing across the board, and that the new ethical standard that she's trying to say she's going to uphold, she's sending a loud message to every department of the city government.
Oh, yeah, she is, and she's sending a loud message to her critics, and maybe she thinks she's been losing some political capital. You know, there are 11 votes against her budget, which is a lot more than usually. The usual dissent is 5 or 6. So maybe people were beginning to question just how much political capital she has. You know, she won the runoff race 75% to 25%, and they thought she was in power. It was chipped away. This will help her, I think. And she's sending a message. When she thinks she's right, when she thinks she can start changing the culture in Chicago on a variety of things, not just here, she's going to do it. Smart move by Mayor Lori Lightfoot today, December 2nd.
So we're wrapping up the year, but a couple of things have happened right before Thanksgiving and since the last time we talked, and one of the things was, what, you want to go on the Chicago city budget, or you want to talk about what Mayor or Governor Pritzker is doing?
Yeah, let's go over to Governor Pritzker, because he gave, and you posted an important address that he gave to the Economics Club, and it's 49 minutes, I think, and it's been airing in Chicago. It's been airing on your site on youtube.com/Illinois Channel TV, and there's lots in there. And what we're talking about tonight, I believe, is he stated 5 things that were an important part of his fiscal agenda.
I talk about 5 things from a fiscal perspective that we need to focus on in the state. Everybody on my staff can cite these 5 things because they hear about them every day, every week that we're in office from me. And that's, pensions, property taxes, balancing the budget, paying down our bill backlog, and growing jobs in the state. Now, there are other things we could all cite that we need to do for sure, but just on the fiscal front and financial and economic front, those are 5 things that I have to spend every day, every week focused on, and we need to, work at solving those. But the narrative about Illinois is that we're a state on the rise, that we've had our challenges, that's for sure, that we were going in the wrong direction. But we are turning the ship in the right direction, and we are powering ourselves forward. And we have seen a lot of very positive things happening. And I'm not going to take credit for this. I'm just going to lay out for you one thing that you ought to feel good about the state of Illinois. And in every region of the state, we're growing jobs. That we now have the lowest unemployment rate ever recorded in the history of the state of Illinois at 3.9%.
So the governor is happy to report 3.9%. And one thing I would say, this is kind of interesting in that the government is picking these formats, and where he calls them fireside chats a la FDR, where instead of being interviewed by a journalist, he's been sitting down for some conversations like this. They are interesting. They're long form. This ran, I think, about 50 minutes, as I recall. And so the governor has quite a lot of time where he can lay out some of his thoughts on his policy agenda.
Well, yes, but he did take a lot of credit there for things I don't think he rightly can. I'm not sure what we got in that clip completely, because you and I had heard parts of it and watched this thing and that you posted in its full form. So, but one of the things that he certainly mentions there, I'm not sure if it was in the clip, but he mentions when he spoke to the Economics Club, is how bad the narrative was for under Governor Rauner. Did we say he accused the governor of saying everything was terrible, it was awful, Illinois was an awful place? Well, he's changing the narrative, and he's talking up how wonderful Illinois is. And then further, he says, and it is wonderful because, we're getting jobs growing in every region of the state that we report to our Bureau of Labor Statistics. 14 regions all have growth in unemployment. He says 3.9% unemployment in Illinois. That's the lowest, he says, ever in Illinois. Well, guess what? He's only been governor for 8 months. He's only had a new budget, for 2 months or something. Is he taking credit for that? Is he taking credit for 3.9% unemployment? Come on, Terry, you know who gets the credit for the 3.9% unemployment, right? It ain't Governor Pritzker, is it?
No, I would say, in all honesty, because just for the reasons you mentioned, it really goes, I think, to what President Trump has done by cutting not only taxes in December of 17, so just 2 years ago, but also all the regulations that the president, he's been cutting back a lot on any number of regulations. And we see the results of that not only in the GDP numbers of the economy growing more, but Illinois benefited back in April. And certainly it wasn't due to what Pritzker had done by being 3 months in office. When the state found an extra $1.5 billion coming in tax revenues than what they expected. In fact, Governor Pritzker was going to underpay the pension obligation by $800 million. When they found out they had an extra $1.5 billion in tax revenue because of all these new people working, then the governor decided to make the entire payment as he was supposed to be making. So, the governor might take bows for a number of things. He got his capital budget passed, the first capital bill in 10 years. He got a number of other things on his agenda passed. But the primary key to his economic turnaround is where he's pushing for progressive income tax. And, that doesn't go to the voters until 11 months from now, November of 2020. And that may or may not pass.
It was a little bit deceptive, because if he says, I think he said in the clip, he said, well, it is 3.9%, and he said something like, whoever gets the credit. It might have been nice if he had been gracious enough to say, well, the president and I have our disagreements. But to be fair, he might have said, look, the country grew at a very high rate in 2018, at a higher than Obama rate in 2017. I think those yearly rates are 2.5% in 2017, 3% in 2018. And I might have differed with them on the tax
Just
cuts
under
and the
3%
regulations.
technically, I mean.
Yeah, yeah. So I might have differed, he might have said, but I guess the credit has to go to him, and Illinois is the beneficiary.
The thing I
Well,
would say,
he
look,
didn't say that.
we'll
He
give
didn't
credit
say
where
that.
credit is due. We're not picking on the governor, but just for factual matters, the fact of the matter is we got low unemployment ever, and it's the same thing that's happening across the United States. So Illinois is not an outlier by having low unemployment. This is what's been happening because we have a better economy. The governor can take credit for getting a budget passed on time. And you know, in the 20 years that I've been covering Illinois state government, we have been in session over the summer most of those years because people weren't getting budgets passed. And famously, Governor Rauner had several years where he had no budget passed. So Governor Pritzker came in his first session, got a budget passed. He says it's balanced. Others say it isn't. But at least he's shown some strong executive leadership, I would say, to his
Well,
credit.
you can say that. You can say that. But if I were a political science professor trying to be objective, I would say if you have, what is it, 74 to 44 margin in the Illinois House of Democrats to Republicans, and if you have 40 Democratic senators to 19 Republicans, you really think that takes a lot of Democratic leadership when you ran on trying to get those people elected and stay elected? I mean, come on now.
Well,
Rauner,
Jeff,
on the other
here's
hand,
the evidence that you're wrong. While he has the votes, the fact of the matter is Rod Blagojevich also had the votes, and Pat Quinn also had the votes. And both of those Democratic governors couldn't get frequently a budget passed on time. And they certainly weren't passing the heavy legislative. Governor Pritzker did a lot of things that were heavy lifts. You may or may not agree with them, but he got them done. And so not only the budget, he got the Capitol bill, he expanded abortion rights, very controversial there. He did a number of major things. I'm not endorsing all of those. I'm just saying he got his agenda passed.
Well, let's go on because, you know, I mean, you mentioned that $45 billion thing, that's like the glory thing. He's a little bit concerned about that $45 billion capital fund because a little bit of an update for folks on the feds and what they're doing on their investigation. You know, the Senator Sandoval has resigned now, effective January 1, I believe. Partly, you could say, at the behest of Governor Pritzker. Tom Cullerton, state senator from DuPage, has been indicted on ghost payrolling charges relating to the allegations that he was paid by a major union but didn't really do the work for it. But he's not resigned, and I don't know. You know, I've heard the governor push Sandoval out of the seat. I haven't heard him do that for Tom Cullerton. Maybe he wants to come on and explain to us why the difference. Okay. But, you know, and there's a lot of rumor and innuendo about that and about the investigation that's going on by the U.S. Attorney's Office. I mean, people have trouble trying to put together the disparate elements, okay? Because there's stuff about the ComEd rate hike, there's stuff about ComEd lobbyists, and so people are wondering, and we've heard others speculate that maybe the U.S. Attorney is getting into what's known as a RICO violation, or alleging a RICO violation. That's RICO, the acronym for Racketeering Influence Corrupt Organization. And if the U.S. Attorney John Lausch is doing that, and what would be the criminal enterprise that he might be alleging? Might it be the Illinois Democratic Party? I mean, these people are mostly, if not all, Democrats that he's going after. Might it involve ComEd, because they know they've been talking about in the information they're subpoenaing relating to the major rate hike that involves a rate hike of several $100 million a year that was passed a few years ago in the Illinois legislature? Would those be some predicate acts? would the kind of lobbying they're talking about be
Well,
parts
let's
of
be
those
clear. What
predicate
people
acts?
don't use the word predicate acts. What does that mean?
Well, those are individual, is a conspiracy. And under RICO, you would allege a conspiracy involving two or more individuals or entities, and you would allege specific instances in which those individuals took overt acts to further that conspiracy. Those would be known as the predicate acts, okay? Occurrences, actions, events. What did they do? So none of this is flushed out yet, because I haven't even heard the U.S. Attorney say he is alleged, and that would be John Lausch. He oversees 100 or so assistant U.S. attorneys here in the Northern District of Illinois. He was appointed by President Donald Trump. All of the U.S. attorneys are appointed by the president. They usually change when a new administration comes in. So all I'm saying here, you referred to that $45 billion capital fund like it was a great thing. And I think people have been speculating, whether it be the Chicago Tribune, WBEZ, about the things we're talking about, this is that investigation, and about emails that they've discovered. They have sources. And, Sandoval is important because he was a major player in that $45 billion capital fund. And it was thought he would control a lot of the expenditures. And that was thought to be maybe one of the reasons people speculate that the governor wanted him to resign and out of here, because he didn't want his capital fund, as he views it, $45 billion, tainted by that.
For those who
So all
don't
I'm
know,
saying,
Senator Sandoval, who was a member of the Senate for quite a long time, was the chairman of the Senate Transportation Committee, and was co-chair as they held hearings around the state on what kind of money is needed to be spent on different projects, and they had a series of hearings. So
so we don't run out of time. Can we just move on? Tell the other viewers, we'll come back to this discussion because there'll be certainly updates.
the only thing we can say is
about the
everyone right now in the press is kind of like standing outside the store looking in, seeing these different events happening, people being targeted. No one really yet knows definitively what's going on, and we don't want to speculate too much, but we'll be following the story for you. So,
and everybody's presumed innocent until shown to be guilty. We believe in that, of course. But I mean, you could slide right over to the president election. John Cullerton having stepped down recently, that'll take effect in January. There'll be an election on January 19th. A lot of people don't realize that although it will surely be a Democrat who's the new Senate president, it's not just the Democratic caucus of 40 Democratic senators who vote, but all 59 senators actually vote, apparently, in that election. The 19 Republicans and 40 Democrats. We've shown, I don't know if you have it handy, we've shown some of the initial people who were speculated to running for that position. And you can see Senator Lightfoot was the top person, and she's to your left. And then there was Andy Minar and Heather Staines. Andy Minar just to your right of Lightfoot, and Heather Staines on the other end. They apparently have joined the leadership now to support Lightfoot for Senate president. And Don Harmon, being squeezed by those two, say Senator from Oak Park, has remained outside that. And now it's thought the leading two people running for Senate president, there are a few others, would be Lightfoot and Don Harmon. So there they are. And that vote can get rather complicated, as I said, because the Republicans vote as well as the Democrat for the Senate president, but also, and because Cullerton stepped down now, that's the election. I don't think there'll be Republican leadership posts open unless somebody resigns. But if the Democrats start playing if the Republicans start playing in the Democratic choice, people speculate, well, the Democrats may turn on some point and start doing that with the Republicans. Maybe that's something we should come back to again.
I don't know if
because
Senator Cullerton, is he
pensions.
going to resign prior to his replacement? Because you just lost Senator Sandoval. There's not 59 senators in place now. There's 58. So
Well, Cullerton has said he won't participate in this election, so that makes you down to 59. Sandoval's resignation will be effective before the election, so that takes you down to 58. Should Cullerton resign, Tom Cullerton, that would take you down to 57. But it appears you need like 29. People have said 30, but it seems to me, yeah, 30 would certainly do it for a majority.
I think your math might be off a little bit on that Senate. It might be down to 57 with Tom Cullerton in there.
Whatever you could say,
Well,
29 might do it. 29 or 30 will do it, whatever numbers you're dealing with. But I think we want to get to pensions because we only have a few minutes left. And there's an important article that was written by the Illinois Policy Institute just about a week ago, and it tells us that Senator Cullerton is walking away with a tremendous pension future, okay? Possibly as much as $4 million in pension money should he live to be 95. That's only another 24 years. With his pension ranging at annual rates of $130,000 in a few years, $150,000, and up higher, okay? So, you know, did anybody realize that Senator Cullerton might get $4 million in pension money? And the question is, that's not the main pension problem. There are not that many Cullertons around, Senate presidents, but there are others, and it is symbolic. And the question is, what would Senate President Cullerton say to us right now if he were here to defend that $4 million? That's one question.
Well, Jeff, right. The Illinois Policy Institute had an article saying because Cullerton has been in for a while, and this is a law that passed back in 1989 that put a sweetener in for those who were serving at that time. And basically, if what happens is they were getting a 3% bump. Now, everyone getting a pension gets a 3% annual bump, but some of these who were covered under this law passed in '89 gave them a 3% bump each year prior to their actual retirement. So at this point, Cullerton, when he retires in January, would get 17 years of a 3% bump. The result of that is that he's going to start off making somewhere in the area of about $83,000, but then in July of 2021, it's going to jump to like $120,000, a 54% increase.
We got to get out in a few seconds, but the closing thought for our viewers here is Governor Pritzker is touting the major benefits of raising the rate of return around the state for police and fire pensions due to consolidation. But he didn't really touch the $200 billion pension problem. Some would say $270 billion counting healthcare of the state of Illinois, or the city of Chicago, $70 billion pension problem. What's he going to do? That's really foremost. And does this highlight, even just symbolically, the kind of major bucks that are at issue here? That's a good question for maybe Senate President Cullerton, currently Senate President Cullerton, will want to come on and answer. Right, Terry?
Right. And Jeff, never enough time. Viewers, thank you for watching. Don't forget, on our YouTube channel, make your comments heard. We read all of them. Jeff, we'll say goodbye until next time.